All right, Metal Maniacs, it's the Meister from Brews and Tunes, and I have a very, very special guest today. I am absolutely beside myself, as the English would say. I am chuffed to be chatting with a legend, a legendary drummer, one of the most inspiring and inspirational drummers in heavy metal. And that is, of course, Mr. Antony Bray, better known as Abaddon, of course, of the band Abaddon, and a little band you might know of that came out of Newcastle, England, in the late 70s, early 80s, that basically invented, extreme metal, Venom. So, do you want to go by Antony? Do you go by Antony or Abaddon?
Well, whatever you want to do.
Okay, well,
Whatever you want
I would love to call you Abaddon.
to do.
Such an honor to be chatting with you. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I've had some health issues, as I think you know, for the last
Right.
I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, something like that. I don't know, but it's all gone very well. I'm really lucky that we have such a good health service here in England. And a lot of what I've had done would have taken a lot longer and would have been a lot more expensive was I living somewhere else. So it's
Right.
gone very well.
Good, good. Yeah, it's great to hear. And as you mentioned, and I know it was made public, I think in September, October of this past year. I think maybe through Brave World Words or one of the big metal online magazines that you were diagnosed with lymphoma.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like you're doing well and starting to do some more playing again. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I had to get around to was I didn't understand the how it would affect me mentally and physically. Having chemotherapy and radiotherapy, stuff like that, is it leaves your immune system pretty wide open to absolutely anything that's going around. So getting your strength back up and getting back up to playing is especially sort of extreme drumming is it's very cathartic. It's very good, but it's pretty knackering.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it would be. Yeah, it would be very cathartic. Kind of, really pounding on the drums, pounding on the skins. But yeah, as you mentioned, yeah,
It's good getting back with the lads as well. Getting back into that kind of metal family thing that most bands have. It's that's really helpful. You don't have to say how you do, and you don't have to say anything. You just have to support and get on with it.
right on, right on, nice. And that's one thing I wanted to touch base with specifically Abaddon, your band Abaddon, or sometimes called Abaddon UK. Because unfortunately, multitudes of people have ripped off that name, so over the years, which I'm sure is
There's a lot of it
frustrating.
about.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, if you look at like the metal encyclopedia, the metal encyclopedia, there's just this giant list of Abaddons. It's like,
Yeah,
no, there is one Abaddon. Like,
I think it's a pretty notorious lady wrestler over there.
oh, really? It
But
goes by Abaddon.
yeah, she's doing very well apparently.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I know
Uh,
I don't intend to wrestle her. Whatever comes from me.
maybe that's your next venture.
Let's not go there.
um So yeah, let's talk about the band. I know, obviously you formed Abaddon back in the 90s, but and never necessarily went away, but you kind of revitalized the band and restarted up the band, and I guess what, around 2015, 2016-ish,
Yeah,
around.
it
uh,
kind of came out of it wasn't yeah, I would say frustration, but it wasn't. It was material that I was bringing to Venom at
hmm,
the time, more industrial stuff, and kind of really where I saw the heavier end of things going. And what I had intended was that I would bring in this overtly over the top industrial crazy stuff and have Mattis and Kronos add their things to it. And it didn't happen like that. It just it kind of got kicked out of the pool, and So I decided to do it myself. And at the time, me and Eric Cook, who was Venom's manager for a long time, we'd purchased a recording studio. So it gave me the ability to be in the studio on sort of downtime whenever I wanted. And I was working with a guy called Kevin Ridley, who's the singer in Skyclad now.
Oh yeah.
And me and Kev would just get together and whatever we would feel, we'd kind of throw down and record. And that was a really lucky situation to be in. You know, not a lot of people could be in that situation. So it meant that I could record stuff at a pretty good professional level and sort of farm that out to labels and see who was interested, who thought it would work, you know. And it's meant that I've been able to be very free with what I've done without necessarily having to be massively monetarily successful with it. I can you know, I can write stuff, I can record stuff, and I've been very lucky.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, obviously the I think it was what 2000 when I Am Legion came out, which was, you know, purely industrial, you know, metal. But then I know, you know, the later stuff you've incorporated more of a, you know, more of, you know, kind of that traditional, you know, rock metal vibe that you're known for with the newest material. But it still has some, you know, trinkets of you know, kind of a more modern you know, I guess industrial sound, but you know, like Flowers of Evil, that EP that came out in, I guess it was what, 2016, which
Yeah.
man, what a great EP. I love that. And the newer stuff with All That Remains and the Clown, and yeah, you guys are doing some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's again, the fact that I was able to hook up with Steve Hogarth, who was in bands like Hardcore, who were a very punky metal band around the 80s and 90s. And I met up with Steve, and he again allows me. He's a brilliant studio technician, and he allows me to come up with ideas and throw them around. And if they wind up in the bin, they wind up in the bin. But Steve will turn around like months and years later and say, "Oh, do you remember when we recorded this? Or do you remember when you had this idea? Do you remember this lyric that you wrote?" I'm like, "Fuck no, you know, it was like that was like years ago." And he's like, "Yeah, well, I've still got it, and here it is." And I wondered if you wanted to refresh it and rethink it. And it's like I say, I'm really lucky to have people like that around me, you know, and to have the ability to step back from stuff, and yet it still happens, you know. It's still there, and like I say, but well, like you're saying, I've never said when I've had a band around me, I've never said this is it, this is the song, and this is how it goes, and that's the end of it because it's called Abaddon. It's like um, it's whatever the guitarist brings to the table, whatever a vocalist brings, or a keyboard player. I don't give a fuck, you know. It's like whatever somebody wants to bring to the table, and whatever I can add to that. The fact that it's got Abaddon written on it is only because of the Venom link.
Yeah.
If the band was called something completely different and I was named Abaddon as the drummer in that, I'd be equally as happy.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like it's a very collaborative process that you have with Abaddon, with the band Abaddon, and you know, with Steve, you know, with the Hogman, and with Ken Johnson. Yeah, it seems like you guys like really fit well together. And I've seen some. Obviously, I haven't been over there to see any live shows, but I've seen footage that's been posted on YouTube. And yeah, you guys are tight and lots of energy, and just I think you've really captured a really interesting, unique sound, and it translates well on stage, on you know, in the live venue as well, I think.
The energy is the big word there. You've hit it right on the, you know, hit it right on the head. It's when people come to see us, and people travel from all over Europe, and you know, guys come from America, and they come to Mia Fest and whatever, and they see us. And the one thing that they say, which I take on board really as, you know, as top notch, is that it sounds like early Venom. It sounds like when we're playing live, it comes across as if you're watching Venom in a rehearsal or something, you know, because it's in a smaller venue. And that to me is everything, because that's what Venom, for me, that was what Venom wasn't about the riffs. You know, people say, oh, it was about the songs, and the songs were great, and the lyrics were great, and the ideas were great, the pyro was great. All that's good. You know, so it all goes to make up that band that we said we wanted to be. We wanted to take influences from Kiss and Priest and Motorhead and Deep Purple and blah, 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 and throw them all in a pot and just see what came out, you know, and that's all we ever did. You know, be a heavier Motorhead, be a more over the top Kiss, be a more obnoxious Sex Pistols. You know, that was what we wanted to be, and within that is that heart, that soul, you know, that passion, and that's what Abaddon's got today, and that's what we don't have to work on. But you know, we can work on getting tight, we can work on getting better lighting, better PAs, blah blah blah. But we don't have to work on the passion. The passion's there every time. If we're in a small rehearsal room and we plug in and we just bring it, you know, it's always there. Otherwise, I'd stop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I love the fact that you mentioned it. Yeah, it does have that kind of, yeah, that early Venom vibe to it, but at the same time, it's its own thing. You know, obviously, you know, Hogman has his own voice, and there's almost even like I hate doing the comparison thing, but it almost, even though you don't sound like them, it reminds me, and I can't even put a finger on, like Voivod kind of pops in my head sometimes when I listen to Abaddon a little bit. And I don't know why exactly, but there's something reminiscent.
Voivod were one of the bands that were very vocal about being influenced by Venom.
Yeah.
Although I could never see it. I mean, I like Voivod a lot, but I could never see where the Venom thing hit them. But they were always very vocal about that. And Steve's a massive fan of Voivod. You know, that's one of the bands that he would cite, I guess, in his top 5. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would have thought so. So whatever there is of Voivod that we're bringing, it's got to have a lot to do with Steve. It has to. You know, it's he's so influenced by them. Them and Sugar. He likes Sugar so much, and
Okay, yeah.
a lot of his bass playing and his really heavy vocals, I think, probably come from that sort of angle, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. So what is the future of Abaddon right now? What do you foresee a full-length album? You know, are you guys working on new material at all?
Absolutely, yeah. There's we've got to deal with an Italian label who are doing some vinyl for us. It'll be a kind of a limited thing. I don't know. I don't want to make it too limited. I want to make it available to whoever wants it. And these guys are pretty good with availability, you know, with cutting studio availability. And so we've been doing that for a little while. While I've been getting through all this, Steve's been doing a lot of that. A lot of the drums were already recorded. But yeah, we're working. We've got material for a full-length album. We've got a label who want to do it. We've got a couple of other labels interested. European labels. We'll be looking for a deal throughout North America.
Oh, great.
There's also a Venom thing which has always been in the back of my mind. There's a kind of we did a Venom, a tribute to Venom a long time ago, and Voivod got involved with that. A lot of bands got involved. It's always been in the back of my mind to do another one of those. So, you know, you never know, one day maybe.
Cool. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love that. That would be fantastic.
Maybe some of the more obscure songs, you know, some not sort of black metal, Welcome to Hell, Die Hard. Maybe some of the more, you know, the older stuff, the more sort of B-sides of those singles, you know.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. Or even some later stuff too.
Yeah. Maybe.
Primeval era, or even, you know, like Cast in Stone or something. You know, stuff that you don't hear very often.
It's all there to be revamped, you know.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I love that. Let's change gears a little bit and but let's go back in the way back machine. I was curious, one, kind of your start in music. Did you come from a musical family? Kind of what was the impetus for you in drumming?
I didn't come from a musical family. Um, I used to babysit when I was younger. I used to babysit for. I had a big family, and I used to babysit for cousins and whatnot around the. Used to live around the corner. And um, one of the guys who was going out with, married to one of my cousins, was going out one night. He was getting ready, and he said, "Do you what sort of music are you into?" You know, and I said, "Oh, not really into music. No, like I don't listen to much." So he says, "Oh, well, this is my record collection. You know, I mean, not this gigantic record collections that you see these days, but this guy had 20, 30 albums, and they were all hard rock albums. You know, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin. It was all this stuff. A few of the American bands, Cream, some of the Grateful Dead, stuff like that."
Hmm.
And he showed me how to work a record player, so I didn't scratch his records. And he said, "Look, when the kids are asleep, have at it. Just see what you think, see what you like." And it was like this just eye-opening, fucking amazing time. And I'll never forget it. It was just like being handed this, I don't know, this doorway
Right.
that I never thought I would go. My background was athletic, and my mum and dad were really into athletics, and I was sort of more interested in that sort of thing. And this got me down a completely different path.
Hmm.
And I bumped into a guy, and a guy called Trevor. And Trev, I was probably around sort of 12, 13 then. Trev was a little bit older. And he was like, "Yeah, but have you heard this and have you heard that?" And he was started playing stuff like Kiss and things like that, And I was like, "What the fuck's going on here?" I mean, you're going back to sort of, I don't know, 74, 75, 76, and it was like, there was so much great music.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of predated um, that beginning of the new wave of British heavy metal. So that was another rolling kind of thing. And all the Northeast um, side of that was right on my doorstep. And it was such a big deal worldwide, and it's still there, and people are still interested in it 40 years later, and it's like, it was all right on my doorstep. I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to look up to bands that I would never get to see.
Right.
I could go down to the local club, and I could see Raven, Tigers of Pantang, I could see Spirit, I could see Fist.
Wow.
Um, and all these great bands, Geordie, who had Brian Johnson, was the singer with them before he joined AC/DC. And all these bands were playing in local pubs and clubs. And it cost you nothing. You'd go in and you'd have a few drinks and whatnot. And it was just such a great way to grow up.
Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing. Well, you mentioned, the new wave of British heavy metal, and which, I'm a massive fan of. But and that was one thing that I always thought was really interesting, because, Venom is put in that same category, but you guys were so completely different. You had your own vibe, I mean, like I said before, I mean, you just this extreme, and now we call it extreme metal. Then it was just, metal. But there was just such a different vibe of how you guys sounded and how you played. And I love the fact that you said, you wanted to be, kind of this combination of, you know, Priest and Kiss and Deep Purple and the Sex Pistols, but all of it, and Motorhead obviously, and amped up, and faster, more aggressive. And so I know I was curious. So the kind of the origins of Venom. I know. Did you know Jeff? Did you know Mantis already, or how did you guys connect? And then how did I know Conrad Kronos came in a little bit later, not much, but a little. He wasn't an original member.
No.
So yeah, how did you guys all connect?
Well, part of the scene, as I was saying, the all these bands were playing all these clubs and whatnot, and we had around Newcastle are a lot of sort of little suburbs, Wallsend and Heaton, South Shields, North Shields, Whitley Bay, and all these places had groups of metalheads who had their local pubs. that they would go to, and the pubs would have DJs, or they'd have jukeboxes, or if they had a big enough room, they'd have bands on, and all these people would then gravitate at 9, 10 o'clock. They'd go up to Newcastle, and they'd go to the 5, 6, 7, 8 pubs in Newcastle that catered to metalheads. And when it got to sort of midnight or whatever, they'd all go to the Mayfair, which was the club, which held 2,000 or 3,000 people. A part of that was 2 or 3 great music stores in the Newcastle area. And one of the things in these stores was you used to get a lot of people going, and people would just go in and play guitars, they'd play drums. And you'd meet people, and you just sit and talk. Somebody would be sitting playing Smoke on the Water or something, and you just sit and talk to them, you know. And one of the things that they had was a wall as you walked in the door, and these had bits of paper kind of pinned up there. You know, drummer wanted, guitarist wanted, singer wanted, rehearsal space for hire, drum kit for sale, piano lessons, all this kind of stuff. And this, you know, this kind of wall in all these stores kept getting bigger and bigger, and more people were, and it was a community. It was a community of musicians looking to meet each other, looking to do something with each other. I suppose it would be online these days, but you know, then you didn't have that sort of thing. You didn't have, you know. And I saw this thing saying drummer wanted. And at the time, I've been messing about with. I was an apprentice in a factory here, as a lot of us were. And one of the guys there was a guy called Eric Cook, and another guy was a guy called Clive Archer. And the three of us quickly realized that we liked similar music. And I'd been playing kind of in the bedroom with Clive singing and Eric playing guitar. And we'd been in this bedroom band, just playing covers, some AC/DC, what have you. And I saw this thing saying, drummer wanted for guitarist. So, of course, we didn't have mobile phones. So I went in the corner to the phone box, and I didn't have money to put in the phone. It would only have been, I don't know, what, 10pence or something, but I didn't have the money. So I worked, we all knew a way to get a phone call for free. So I did that. You tap it out, and you know, you get the number. It takes ages, but you do it. So I got through to Jeff, whose mum was rich enough to have a phone in the house. So I get through to this guy, and he says, "What you into, and what do you do, and blah blah blah." We have this good chat, and I seem to remember it went on for quite a while. And this guy was Jeff Dunn, Mantless, and he had a space where his band would rehearse. He had a band, but he didn't have a drummer. And he had space where his band would rehearse. And so I went up there, and we had a kick about, and everybody looked very bored. All the rest of the band looked very bored. And I sort of took Jeff to one side at the end. I said, "Look, yeah, great to meet you and all that lot, and you played great, but your band looked like shit. Everybody looks bored, fucking stiff. You know, if I was you, I would. Can I bring like this guy up who sings?" And Clive used to be into Alice Cooper, so Clive would like be putting makeup on just for the fuck of it. And he'd be putting like, he had these clothes that looked like he'd come out of a crypt, you know. And this is way pre any of the Scandinavian guys getting dressed up in corpse paint. And Clive got it from Alice Cooper, but he took it to the horror nth degree, where Alice was like pretty over the top, but still a bit clowny. Clive was a lot Hammer House of Horror, which was a big deal on TV in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
you know, Peter Cushing and all that kind of thing, and Clive was down that route. And I'll never forget, Judas Priest had a gig, and Jeff was mad, probably still is, mad on Priest. And Jeff said, "Well, I'm going to see Priest." We went to City Hall in Newcastle, and Jeff was downstairs, and me and Clive were up on the balcony. And during this, the first band came on. Might have been Maiden, actually. I don't know. But first band came on, and during the break, the lights went up, and I saw Jeff in the middle. There's about 2,500 people in the City Hall, and I saw Jeff stand up, and I shouted at him, and I pointed to Clive, and Clive had this long straight hair, this really gaunt white face. He weighed like, I don't know, 6 stone, like wringing wet. He was like this horror figure, in daytime, you know, in daylight, he just looked horrific. And I pointed out to Clive, and Jeff was like, all thumbs up, you know. So I took Clive down, and I wound up sacking the rest of the band and just said, look, we need to get another bass player and all this kind of stuff. So that's why we were looking around and why Jeff came across Kronos.
Wow.
So the band came together. Like, the band came together really pretty quickly, really pretty easily. And we all instantly knew that every single part of what we wanted to do was exactly the same as the other two people. We were in town one Saturday afternoon, just walking along, and I don't know which one it was. I think it was probably Conrad who said, look, I don't want to be called Conrad on stage. It sounds fucking stupid. If I've got all this long hair and I'm kicking the shit out of the bass and, you know, all this sort of stuff, I don't want to be called Conrad. I was like, all right, well, he says, I want to be called Kronos. I was like, that's, where the hell do you get that from? He said, I don't know, I just think it's a great name. And I was like, well, I had been thinking of something, and at the time, I had this semi-religious upbringing, so I was kind of kicking against all that stuff and thinking like, well, that's a load of bullshit. But I thought, well, if I'm going to kick against this stuff, I need to read it. So I had been reading the Bible and reading whatever I could get a hold of to kind of understand what it was that I didn't believe in or what it was that I didn't like. I thought, I can't just say that I don't like it because that's shite.
All right.
But I had read about this character, this Hebrew Apollyon, and he was called Abaddon, and he was in the Book of Revelations, and I thought, that's an insane fucking name. That's great. And Jeff said, well, I've been thinking of something as well, and he came up with this mantis thing, and I was like, it's weird that, you know, if we sat down and talked about Pyro, then we'd all agree. If we sat down and talked about album covers, we'd all agree. If we sat down and talked about the Venom logo, which I designed, we instantly agreed. Photographs, agreed. Everything, just agree. There was very little that we didn't agree in that didn't take us a step further. Even the fact that we didn't have a lot of photographs taken too early because we wanted people to wonder about us and wonder what this strange band was. You know, we did a couple of little gigs, but we didn't do anything big, and we didn't invite press to them. And then when we did this, the first gig that I would consider was headlining a festival in Belgium, and a couple of thousand people. And people were coming to see us because they were like, I've heard about the band and I've seen the odd little bit, but I don't know what the fuck is all about. I can't wait to see what this is about, you know?
That's a big leap from, you know, kind of playing some small gigs to doing a festival. That's
well, yeah, it was I mean, there was that, and then there was you know, within weeks, Johnny Z was saying, you know, come to New York, and we'd never flown before. We'd never thought about playing anywhere in New York, and Johnny's got this band called Metallica, and he's got these gigs booked, and we were just like, yeah, what the fuck? It's a gig, you know. To us, it was everything that was happening was what happened to all bands, as far as we were concerned. That's what happens to bands. They just, you're nothing. You go, you rehearse, you get a few songs together, you record them in a studio, and you put them out, and then everybody wants you to tour, and you're selling T-shirts. That's, you know, in hindsight, that's a lot of fucking hard work that we kind of bypassed. We were doing the work, but it just, everything was working. Everything worked out.
Fell into place very quickly, it sounds like. Was there do you remember like a specific point where you were like, holy shit, we've made it?
No. Kind of semi-recently when I did the Venom Inc. stuff, and people in Japan were coming up for autographs, and people were crying when they met you, and people were saying you know, people in South America were saying I was no good in school and I wanted to give up, and then I heard Countless Battery, and I started reading books about it, and I started looking at Venom lyrics and blah blah blah. And I'm sure a lot of bands get this, but that makes you reassess what you've done, and that's when you've made it. To me, that's when you touch people's lives. It's easier these days because you've got the internet and you can speak to people, but to be lucky enough to be able to go there and meet them and shake hands and take photographs and sign, their albums and whatever. That's kind of for me when you've made it. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. I didn't realize you had I love just to kind of circle back a little bit. I didn't realize you designed the logo. That's cool. The logo, right?
Oh yeah, it was, all of the album covers were kind of were my work. It was something that the only one I didn't do, which was I guess the best one, was black metal. Conrad did black metal. But yeah, I did Welcome to Hell, In League with, A War, Possessed. But yeah, the original logo was done while I was still an apprentice. I was still, I remember standing, skiving, really, not working, just standing with this little pen and paper, doing this thing on pen and paper. And just, it was, I was really inspired by the Yes logo stuff. And
I was going to say, yeah, Roger Dean, yeah.
Roger Dean stuff, yeah. Massively influenced by that stuff. And it was, and I thought, well, and the good thing was, again, being Venom, it was one of the first logos, and I stand by this, that you couldn't read. And the guy from Neat Records said to me when I brought it in, and I said, that's going to be the album cover. And he brought it in, he says, I cannot read that. I don't know what it is. And I went, great. What do you mean? I said, people are going to pick it up and say, what the fuck is that?
Right.
I said, but that means they've gone into a record store full of 1,000 albums, looked at ours, picked it up and went, what the fuck does that say? And then you turn it over and it says, we drink the vomit of the priests and make love to the dying whore. And you go, what the actual fuck? And I've heard so many people have told me they had to sneak it into the house because their mother and father were just like, nope. They had to have uncles or aunties buy it for them and keep it in their house. And it's like, that's exactly what I wanted to happen. I wanted people to be shocked to pick it up and have that shock value. Because don't forget, at the time I was, we were all influenced by things like The Exorcist, which was coming out at the time, 77, I think The Exorcist came out. And stuff like that was all really pushing boundaries. Everything was, bands, album covers, movies, all this kind of stuff. And for us to be at the forefront of a bit of that was lucky. It was happenstance.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and you guys took it to the next level, which I think, which was a very smart move. I don't know if it was a conscious move necessarily, or if it was, but I mean, the fact that, Welcome to Hell with the pentagram and the goat, and, and at that, I don't know if people realize now, especially younger people might not realize now, how incredibly shocking that was at that time, especially in America, with the whole satanic panic bullshit. But I'm sure it was similar in the UK. But I mean,
it was. We got banned in a record store, a big record store called HMV, and we actually got banned. They were so late in coming to the table that they banned us for the third album cover, which was At War with Satan, which was just a brown leather cover.
Yeah.
But it had an inverted cross on it, and it had the words At War with Satan written on the front. But it took them so long to realize the stuff that they'd been stocking of Venom leading up to that was such a shock. And they had it in the store window. They just didn't realize. They just didn't cotton on.
Wow, that's wild. Did you guys realize at the time how revolutionary your sound was and your imagery was? Did you have a perception of that? Or you're just kind of doing your thing?
I did, because one of the bands that I used to look up to was a band called Fist. And Fist were always one of the heavier bands. It was still a blues rock, heavy rock band, but they were one of the heavier bands that I'd seen from the local scene, from the Newcastle northeast area. And we were in Impulse one day in the studio, and bands used to drop in and out. It's in a place called Wallsend, and all the bands, even the bands that came afterwards, like Satan and Tyson Dog and Blitzkrieg, all those bands used to just wander in and out of Neat Records all the time. And we were in the studio and we were kicking the shit out of something, and Fist came in to the control room. So Keith, who was the engineer, came on the microphone and said, okay, hang five. I just want to talk to these guys, and then we'll get on with it. So as we stopped, the mic was still live, and I heard one of the guys out of Fist say, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck are they doing in that room? What is that?" And then Keith cut the mic off, and it was ages later that I was speaking to Davey, and I said, "Do you remember when?" He said, "Yeah, I didn't know what the fuck you were doing. It sounded like you were breaking the place. It sounded like the walls were going to come down. I didn't know what the fuck you were doing." And I was like, "But that's when." He goes, "Yeah, I get it now." He said, "On that day coming in, like I don't know, it was a Saturday or something. We could only get in there on downtime." Um, he says, "Yeah, on that day," he says, "it just took me so much by surprise." And I said, "Well, that's what we're about. It's about the surprise." One of the first photographs I had done, or some of the early photographs, you can't see my face.
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of black metal bands that came after that, and you can't see their face, and that was unheard of, really, because obviously, if you're seeing Deep Purple, you know what they all look like. If you see Ozzy Osbourne, you know what he looks like. If you see Kiss, even with the makeup on, you know what they look like. Um, and I was kind of doing these leather jackets and black images with the dogs or whatever, but you wouldn't see my face. And Kronos would do this thing, sit in the middle of a pentagram in the middle of the floor, and that's been copied so many times.
Yeah.
So we were setting up this thing which became notorious in Scandinavia. But the thing that I always say, and the thing which always I think was impressive about Venom, was you could take a band like Sepultura from South America, you could take a band like Pantera out of America, you take Slayer, Exodus to some level, and then you can go up into Germany and you can have Sodom and Creator, and they're different to the others. And then you go into Scandinavia and you have Emperor and bands like that, and Quorthon and everything, and they're different again. But they all come back to Venom.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily go back to Motorhead or go back to Judas Priest, where their roots come back to. Although all those bands are very different, Japanese bands, they're all different, but where they come back to is Venom.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think you nailed it with that. I especially like Creator and Sodom and Destruction, and there's just so much influence on, which is one of the reasons I love Venom so much, is thrash metal, black metal, death metal. I mean, you guys didn't necessarily invent those styles, but the influence on them is paramount. And for me, it was, the first time, I don't know how old I was, junior high, maybe, I can't remember. I was a teenager. The first time I heard Venom, similar to, I think, the member of Fist, it was shocking to me. I had never heard anything like that. But I was attracted to it, right away. But I'm like, what the hell is that? But it was just, it really took me aback. That's one thing I love about music, and I especially extreme metal music, something that just, and not necessarily that it's, I'm horrified by it, but the fact that it's its own thing, and it's so original and so unique. And it's funny, now looking back, I'm sure, you probably get this all the time, people talking to you, but just how, I don't think I realized at the time, but now, how influential Venom was on how I listen to music and continue to listen to music to this day.
So I think it's the fact that it's still relevant now, and it's still, people like yourself keeping the flame burning. I think that proves that longevity proves how important and how influential the band's been. And of course, like I said, it's not like we had massive management or massive record companies or massive influence money wise.
Yeah.
We didn't have anybody telling us what to do, or telling us how to have our hair cut, or telling us, what gigs to play, what gigs not to play. It was always just down to the three of us. Eric Cook was a giant. Eric Cook was my best friend, and he learned to be a manager at the same time I was learning to be a drummer. He had to grow with the rest of us, and he did. He absolutely did, and he never called the shots. He never said, you can't do that, you can't do this. He would sit on the table and be the fourth mouthpiece. He'd say, I don't agree with that, or I think this is wrong. And me and him were the best of friends, like brothers, but he'd happily shoot me down in front of the other two if he thought I was wrong.
Wow.
You know, because that's what this band was about. As far as I'm concerned, that's what Venom should always be about. It's about, if I think you're wrong, I'll argue like fuck. But if everybody else agrees with you, okay, let's do it.
Cool. That's interesting. The you mentioned the, with the logo with Neat Records, where for them it was kind of a head scratcher. They're like, what does this say? I was curious about the like, how did they take you? I mean, obviously they loved Venom, but I mean, you look at like At War with Satan, you've got a 20-minute song on there. Was Neat Records like, what the hell? Like, how do we 20 minutes?
By that time, by the third album, see where the relationship came with Neat. Neat was the only studio in the Northeast that was doing this kind of stuff. And Conrad had gone, after he'd been to school and realized that nobody was going to employ him, he'd gone there to ask, could he be like a tape op or something. And the guy from Neat had taken him on, and he paid him this piddly wage, and Conrad hung around with the bands, and he humped the gear up and downstairs, and he plugged the microphones in, and he cut the tape, because then it was 1/4-inch, 2-inch tape, so he learned how to edit tape, and he did all that stuff. So when Jeff heard that he worked there, and Jeff was going to bump into him, it was Conrad that said to the guys at Neat, look, I've got this band and it's way over the top. And the guys, the people at Neat were like, yeah, we've heard that so many times, and whatever the fuck, whatever you say. And Conrad was like, no, really, this is going to be the biggest fucking thing you've ever heard. And they were like, yeah, whatever. But because he kept insisting, they gave us this, as I said, downtime on a Saturday and a Sunday or whatever, and we were allowed to do a few demos, which the main guy at Neat, Dave Woods, thought would just shut Conrad up. That would be enough. Just have a bit of time. There you go. Take it home. Play it on your cassette deck. Shut the fuck up. Come to work on Monday and just do as you're told. But we sent it off to Sounds magazine, which was the kind of precursor to Kerrang magazine. We sent it off to Sounds, and a guy called Jeff Barton reviewed it like nothing you've ever heard. Jeff Barton was a massive fan of Kiss. And very knowledgeable about metal, hard rock in general. And like I say, the new wave of British heavy metal, Saxon, Maiden, all this sort of stuff was getting front covers and what have you. And this little band from Newcastle suddenly gets this half-page review for this shitty little demo, 3-track demo. And it's through the roof, And I'm, like I say, I'm still working in this factory, and I'm picking me a copy of Sounds up and walking up the middle aisle, looking at this bit with the word Venom written on it. I'm thinking, what the fuck? 5 stars for this shitty demo. And I'm like, what the fuck? And obviously the guy at Neat looked at it in the same way and thought, hang on, have you got any other songs? We were like, oh yeah, loads of songs. Right, get the fucking studio, get that recorded. So by the time it came to do At War With, I think, well, I'm pretty sure he'd seen the sales and he'd realized the potential. And if I'd turned up and said, I want to do some insane, over the top, I don't know what, surgery on a fucking cat or something and video it live, I think he would have said, yeah, go ahead with it. It was just basically anything we turned up with, he thought was insane, but agreed to it.
Nice.
What he had to do then was find like-minded partners across the globe, so that he could have a worldwide release of this band and not just an English, British release. So he went to people like Combat, like John Zazula, like Banzai, the guys in France, the guys in Italy. So everywhere had its own specific release at the time. And that was where a lot of things came, like when we started doing the Assault series. If we were going to America and we didn't have a release of the new material, it was quicker for us to do an album called American Assault and just do a handful of the latest songs and put it out as American Assault, as far as we were concerned, just for America, just for that territory, so that we were at least playing something that was on the shelves, that was relevant, and not old albums. And that's where that whole thing came from, Japanese Assault and Canadian Assault. And it was places we hadn't played before, and we wanted them to be up to date with the material, you know.
Nice. Yeah, and a lot of those have been re-released, which is great. You know, on vinyl.
There's been so many released now, you know. Irish Assault and the Vatican Assault. It's just ludicrous now. But that was what it was about. There was a reason to the mayhem, as usual.
Nice. So, you know, obviously there was, you know, you guys had your first, you know, those first 4 big albums, and then there were some changes that happened. You know, a little bit after that, you know, Jeff left, and then you know, Conrad left for a bit, and then, you know, there was the era where, you know, you had Tony and you and Jeff, and then in I guess it was 97, you know, the 3 of you got back together. I was curious, kind of how did that happen? What was the impetus of that?
It was because, as I said, me and Eric had the recording studio, and we had links with lots of people around the world. And one of them was a guy called Andre Verheysen. And Andre had a club in Eindhoven, in Holland, called the Dynamo Club. And we'd been there a couple of times, and we'd seen bands. I saw Slayer there. Funnily enough, I saw Striper there. And Andre had an idea to do a kind of a mini festival at his club, and his club had I don't know, a couple of hundred capacity. But he had these back doors, kind of huge swinging doors, which opened opposite the stage. So this mini festival idea was, if there's too many people, we'll just open the back doors and people can stand outside and still see whoever's playing. So there'd be like 12 bands on or something. But over the years, and especially being as they were kind of close to Germany, a lot of German metal fans would travel. So the Lord Mayor or whoever of Eindhoven got onto Andre and said, look, you know, you're blocking the road. You've got too many people. And instead of saying you've got to stop, he said, why don't we find you a new venue? Because all these people were buying hot dogs, they were staying in B&Bs, they were putting up tents, they were paying for the petrol and whatever to stay there and come and go. And there was no fighting, there was no arguing, it was just this great atmosphere for a nice weekend, you know. And they said, why don't you have a new venue? They got a place called a skate park. I don't know how many thousand it held, but that quickly became too small. And they all got their heads together again, and they took over Eindhoven Airport. And Andre said, you know, came to see me and Eric, and he said, do you want to record some of these bands? And we were like, yeah. And Eric was sort of sitting with me one day, and he said, why don't we, there's no point just recording them, why don't we film them? And I was like, well, maybe because we don't have cameras or a crew or anything like that. And it was like, yeah, we'll rent that shit. That's not a worry. We'll just get other people to do it. So we got this crew together, and it was in the early 90s, and we put this 5-camera shoot together. And we'd ring the bands or the record companies, and we'd say, look, we're going to film all of the bands, whatever happens, which includes your band. And you're talking about like Machine Head, Biohazard, and all these bands. And we'd say, like, for £1,000, £1,000, you can have all the tapes. If you want to put them out, you put them out. You know, we understand we don't have the rights to put them out, but we have the rights from the Dynamo Festival. We have the rights to film every single band, 5-camera shoot, and we'll edit it. And of course, every label said, yeah, we'd like to see that. And we were like, well, we can mix something quickly and send you one song. And nearly everybody said yes, so we were making money, which is great.
Yeah.
And the bands were getting all these 5-camera shoots. So you see a lot now, you go online a lot and you see all this stuff, and it's all, anything from the Dynamo from the early 90s has been shot by me and Eric.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Anything you see, any of the Biohazard stuff or any of that stuff, which was fucking great. that was us. And of course, with dealing with Andre, he said, "You know who we should have on?" He said, "We should definitely have Venom on." And I was like, "Yeah, right. How you say?" He's like, "No, no." He says, "You're here every year. You're doing this thing. You're kind of overseeing it all. Um, why don't you just speak to Jeff and Conrad and just say to them, come over here and just do the Dynamo?" And I was like, "Well, it would have to be fucking huge. It would have to be a ridiculous stage show, way over the top, bigger than we've ever done before, bigger than anybody's seen." And he said, "Yeah, it's on. I'm not going to pay you, but I'll spend absolutely anything you want on the stage show, on getting you here, on where you stay. No questions asked, but you're not getting paid." And we were like, "This sounds good to me." But it took me and Eric 2 years to finally get Jeff and Conrad to sit around a table with us with this offer. So we were going to do it in kind of 94 or something, wound up doing it in 96. With this over-the-top, crazy motherfucking show that I'd put together. I said to them too, all you got to do is turn up and play. We'll get the video of it, the same as we've done with the other bands. We'll get to put the video out, and you'll make your money from the video selling, which is what we did. We did exactly what we did with the other bands. One of the bands that we did it with was Dweezil Zappa.
Oh, cool.
And we contacted Frank's wife, who was managing Dweezil and Ahmet at the time, and the two of them turned up. And I thought, if we can deal with the Zappa family, we can deal with anybody. Because they're so professional. As soon as they heard what we were doing, they were like, "Yeah, we want the material." As Frank was famous for recording everything. And his wife was like, yeah, you film it, you send me everything, I'll give you £1,000, no worries. So we did that with Venom, and that's where that came together. Well, that whole thing, although we did other stuff, Milwaukee Metal Fest, we did a thing in Greece, we did Wild Rock Festival. It was all about getting that together just to do the Dynamo.
Wow. That's so cool. That's amazing. Do you foresee that the three of you would ever get together again? Do you think that'll ever happen?
I don't see why not, because the kind of backstory, the heritage, this kind of thing is way bigger than the three members, any of the three members. And I thoroughly believe that put the three of us in a room together, and it would just start again. I really believe that it would, the balls would be there, the intent would be there, the heart and the soul would be there, because it's what we do. We're not virtuoso players. We're not we're not geniuses at what we do. What we are good at is being together and being in a band. And I can't see why that shouldn't happen again.
Yeah, that would be great. And especially you mentioned, much earlier in the interview that, yeah, you guys are so simpatico. There's so much, not just history, but yeah, like you were saying in those early days, like you just, you all, kind of came from the same place. It was almost unspoken that you have these same ideas and same thoughts, and with the names and all of that. That's So that would be great. It'd be cool to see you guys all back together again someday.
I can see it happening. A lot of people say not, but I can see it happening.
Cool. That would be great. Well, Abaddon, this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor chatting with you today. For those of you watching, if you look in the description below, there are links to Abaddon UK. Check, if you have not heard Abaddon, check out the music, especially the new stuff. It kicks ass. I adore the stuff you guys have been putting out this past year. There's also videos you can check out on YouTube, and a lot of really cool stuff. So again, thank you so very much for chatting with me.
Thank you for that, man. Absolutely brilliant. Great to talk.
Thank you.